Tonight I'm showing you part 2 of my practical miter station. This is the second part of my miter station build. This includes the drawers, the T-track stop system, and the dust collection. If you haven't seen part 1, check it out at the end of this video. I'll have a link. This design of drawers uses the bottom of each drawer as the drawer slide. I have now built 22 drawers in this style, and I love how smooth and sturdy these are and how much weight they can hold. The dados were already cut in the side of the drawer cabinets in part 1 and were sized about 1/16 of an inch thicker than the drawer bottoms. For the drawer bottoms, I cut 1/2 inch plywood wide enough to slide freely inside the dados. This can be a fairly loose fit. The drawer fronts were all cut out of the same sheet of plywood so the grain pattern would match when looking at it from the front. In order to hide the joints of the drawers, I decided to use a sliding dovetail to attach the drawer front to the sides. This technique can be done with just one router bit. This is created by first using the router to cut out the slot in the drawer front, and then cut the tails of the joint by taking the drawer sides and running them on the front and on the back so that I could create that dovetail shape. Before assembling the drawers, I made the handles, which are made from some large dowels and glued to the drawer front. The longer part of the handle has 2 holes drilled into it with a Forstner bit where the short pieces will go. I drilled these with a V-block so they didn't roll when drilling. Make sure these don't rotate at all between drilling the 2 holes because this will mess up your assembly later on. I then drilled the holes partway into the drawer front and glued the whole handle assembly together on each drawer. Once these were dry, I glued the rest of the drawer frame together with some nails in the back to help clamp the glue in place. The bottom was then centered and nailed in place on the bottom of each drawer. I also added 3 pocket holes along the bottom front edge of the drawer to secure the front of the drawer to the drawer bottom. On the bottom of the drawers, I added my favorite product for waxing drawer slides called Slide Ease. For my stops, I decided to go with the simple system of a sliding block in a T-track with an adhesive tape measure marking the dimensions. I cut 2 blocks out of cherry scraps that I had and drilled a hole in the center. I then cut a dado on the underside of the block and glued in a strip of wood. This ensures that the block is always square to the track. The stop blocks also have a small chamfer along the front edge to prevent dust and chips from getting stuck in there. With a fancy jig knob on top, these stops were ready to go. The next thing to do was to accurately install the metal tape measure on either side. After cutting it to length with scissors, I cut a scrap board to exactly 15 inches and marked where the stop was. I then used that mark as my starting point for the 15-inch mark on the tape measure. From there, I could stick the tape into the 3/32 inch deep groove, which kept it just below the surface of the table. Now you may say, wait Mr. Evening Woodworker, how am I supposed to cut something that's less than 12 inches? Well, I've also cut another block that's exactly 12 inches long, and I use this as my extension of my stop block. That way, if I'm cutting something that's more than 12 inches long, I look at the black numbers. But if there's something that's less than 12 inches and I'm using my extension, then I look at the red numbers on the tape. Now for the dust collection. You may have noticed that I created a backstop for my miter saw. This then has a small hose connection which connects to my shop vac. This is designed for localized chip collection. To build this, I just grabbed some pieces of scrap wood and measured, cut, sanded, test fit, and sanded again over and over until I got it to fit and pin to the base of my miter saw. I added a little bit of blue tape on the right side of the localized area of dust collection because I found that it tends to contain a lot of the dust that will shoot out that side. Using this method, I can collect about 70% of the visible dust. This greatly reduces the normal miter saw dust cloud that we get. To help with the other 30%, I built an enclosure around the saw with cutouts and notches so I can still pivot and slide the saw to either side without hitting anything. As I was building this, I had a realization that I had messed up. When I'm cutting a 45-degree angle here, this handle has got to be able to go up all the way. Otherwise, I don't have my maximum cut height on my saw. So I am realizing that this is too short. I cut this too short and I'll need another 1.5 inches up. What I'm going to do is add an extension up here. So I'm going to take this apart and try again. This enclosure was also very tight and custom fit to the bumps, knobs, and edges of this particular saw. I also would like to use this saw with a dust collector. In order to collect the other 30% of the dust, or as much of it as I can, I added a baffle box made out of scrap wood inside the enclosure, which allowed the shop vac to pass through for the localized dust collection. To improve the suction from the dust collector, I added a piece of plywood on the front, which helps to enclose the area. This was secured with magnets and washers, which have been epoxied onto blocks around the edges. This way I can easily remove it when doing wide angle cuts. I can still cut a left 45 with the front on, but it has to be removed to cut a right 45. Utilizing both the shop vac and the dust collector, I figure I can capture about 90 to 95% of the dust from my cuts. And even if I don't have the dust collector on, the shop vac will still collect about 70% of the dust, and the rest is contained inside the enclosure. This has been a fun project to build, and it's always fun coming up with new designs. I hope this gave you some ideas for your own miter station. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Let me know what you think in the comments below or any other ideas you might have. And see you next time.